Welcome back to another edition and indeed another season here on Stones TV and the Maidstone United podcast. In this latest edition, we look ahead to the 25-26 season. So before we get started on Maidstone United's men, we are recording this barely 24 hours after an historic England victory. A first on foreign soil for a senior side, and it all started to turn around again in the final thanks to a Maidstone born and bred striker heading an equaliser, Alessia Russo. Nay, Dame Alessia Russo, before Chloe Kelly smashed home at winning penalty for back-to-back Euros. The Spitfire Lounge and the whole town erupted after both of those moments. How was that for you, Nigel? Because Maidstone, it seems, are massive still.
As Fred always says, yeah, Maidstone are still massive, aren't they? Yeah, it was good, and it's good to see, isn't it? It's good for the women's game, and not just the women's game, but for the nation as well.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
It's
in the we've all got our troubled times at the moment, and in life, but it puts a smile on your face, doesn't it? And as they were saying, I was listening to the commentary there on the BBC, and there's always got inspirational stories. Chloe Kelly, the season she's had, couldn't even get a game for Man City, forced a loan out to Arsenal, and then now she's a Champions League winner and a back-to-back Euros winner, and
not bad.
Exactly, and it is inspirational, isn't it? There's stories like that. You know what I mean? It's good for the nation, and football as a whole. Every sort of nation has their time, and you have to see with Michel Adjaman coming through as well. The future's there, and you can see there's going to be a lot of more Spain and England matches, and let's not forget Germany and USA and Japan. All those countries. So the World Cup in 2 years' time. Where is it? It's Brazil. The Women's World Cup in Brazil. And they're going to be strong as a home nation as well, aren't they? So,
of course.
And England are right up there, and it's good to see, and long may it continue.
Indeed. And talking to those Lionesses, our own Maidstone United women's latest season gets underway in September in the FA Cup. Details will be on the club website and socials once that draw has been made. So it will have been 83 days since the Borehamwood loss when we kick off at Hemel on Saturday the 9th of August. The management team have been busy in the transfer market during that period. 4 of the 10 from last season took up their contract offers, more on them shortly. Those that didn't were Temia Wecker and Aaron Blair, who both moved to Eastleigh. Charlie Seaman left for Ebbsfleet. Ben Brooks signed for runaway second-place National League side York City. Alexis Andre Jr. departed for the Belgian second tier, and after a long association with the Stones, Bivesh Gurung departed. Almost 400 appearances for the Stones between that sextet, and Arj Krasnicki, Jordan Higgs, Rafe Brown, Rhys Greenwich, Sam Smith, Shaq Coulthurst, Tate Trusty, Bailyn Johnson, Farrell Willis, Ricardo German, Solwager Smith, Tom Leahy, Harry Kiprianu, and Ruben Shakpoke and Breathe were all released or returned to their parent club, with over 450 appearances between that group of former Stones. And finally, at the last count, there's 11 new signings having come into the club at time of recording. It's been another hectic summer, one way or another. So first, let's talk about the retained list in the order they re-signed. So George Fowler was first assigned during last season after receiving both the Managers and Supporters Player of the Year awards for the 24-25 season after our last home game here. He's in the backline once more, seeming ever present, starting his 5th season here. Sam Corn signed on a few days after that playoff final defeat. He bagged 2 goals and 3 assists and made 37 appearances in the midfield. He starts his 7th season for the Stones. Thoughts on that established pair then, Nigel?
Yeah, they've both sort of become stalwarts of the club, haven't they? Especially Sam Corn, and all our success in the last few years of they've been at the heart of that.
Yeah.
Who can forget Sam Corn's Sam Corn's goal at Ipswich, ably assisted by that non-foul with George Fowler. So they were both instrumental in that goal, wasn't they? And they were both here in our championship winning season in National League South in 2022. Went through the tough times of the National League season, and they're here now, and that they're happy, they're established here, and they can sort of be that that bedrock for any new players coming in and the youngsters, to know sort of, they're like George's lieutenants, really, aren't they?
Exactly.
They establish the dressing room culture and, just get that banter amongst the boys going, and hopefully, that they have good seasons themselves, because obviously, George is coming off the back of a highlight season for him, really, in numbers on the pitch, isn't he? Like you say, he's been a stalwart in that heart of defence, and he got the player of the season and all the other accolades that he's got. And then Sam Corn, not as good a season as his previous season, but
he's set such a high marker, though.
Of course he has. Exactly that. He's had a few injury concerns last year. He never really got going, and when he was coming back, he was sort of playing a little bit out of position, and just trying to get his fitness up, and he'd get another little knock, and so it was difficult in that respect. But they all know what it is to be successful. They they look after their bodies, and they know what it is to be a Maidstone United player. So hopefully they can pass on that experience to the rest of the group.
Indeed. So Riley Court signed on for his third season with the Stones after an impressive season the last time out, providing the assist for the final goal of that season down at Eastbourne. He made 23 appearances last season, starting 9 times, and he scored in the Kent Senior Cup game at Welling. And young keeper Lenny Holden has committed to the Stones for his second year. He was involved in all 55 matches last season, with 1 start in that aforementioned Kent Senior Cup game and 2 sub-appearances, both weirdly against Farnborough. The home one was memorable, I think. 1 up top late on, wasn't it? Thoughts on those 2, Nigel?
Like you say, it's his third season now, and he's one of those that you've seen glimpses of it, haven't you? What he can do, especially towards the back end of that season. And there was a period, mid-season where he was getting a lot of minutes and starts, and again, he's another one that was around that Ipswich game. He came on and got some minutes at the end of that game, didn't he? Yeah, I think for Riley, it's going to be a big season. This is the season where he's really got to sort of establish himself in that team, isn't he? It's going to be tough, but George knows what he's about. He knows what his development path, and he can, assist him with that, and hopefully give him the minutes that he can shine and flourish. And then, likewise with Lenny Holden. I mean, he's obviously coming as the number 2. Obviously, we haven't announced, as of recording, we haven't announced the signing of our number 1 goalkeeper yet, but he is, coming as a number 2. He had that youth career at Leyton Orient, so he'd have had good coaching there. And I think he's just he's your ideal number 2 keeper, isn't he? He's young, he's just a sponge, he's just lapping up this information. He's learning off of these players. Well, obviously Alexis last year, and he spoke highly of him, and he said he helped him, develop his game here at Maidstone, and hopefully he can continue to do that this season, whoever the number 1 goalie he is, and sort of like be ready and able to be called upon, because obviously he's on the subs bench, isn't he? So there is always that chance that you've got to be ready to if the keeper picks up an injury, or I hope it doesn't happen, but the keeper's sent off. He's got to be ready to come in, and 9 times out of 10 when a goalie's been sent off, it's because they consider a penalty.
Exactly.
So you've got to be ready and switched on to be able to come in and be right in the thick of the action. So hopefully he's learning that, and he's building up his mental strength, because you've got to have a certain little bit of mental strength to be a number 2 as well. So hopefully it's another sort of developing season for him, and he gets a little bit more minutes as well. Obviously he's going to be playing in like the Kent Senior Cup and games like that, I would imagine. So hopefully we can go on a little bit of a run there, and get a few games under our belts, and then he can take that form and get some minutes in the league as well.
So, in the infamous words of Orange Juice, rip it up and start again. Straight over the heads of anyone under 50. We do pride ourselves on being a podcast for all ages, after all. So, like Lewis Capaldi said more recently, how far will you go to get back to the place you belong? With the Stones hoping to do more than just survive. Everyone happy with that new reference? Good. Right, let's look at those new signings then. The mostly new faces. John Gilbert was the first through the door. Like last season's first signing, he was a key player for Slough Town in National League South the previous season, making 39 league appearances, scoring 7 and making 15 for others. He was followed in by fullback David Cisse. The Sierra Leone international made 38 appearances last season for Eastbourne Borough, scoring once and assisting thrice. Thoughts on that first pair through, Nigel?
It's a good solid pair, isn't it? And I mean, John Gilbert, you look at his highlights reel and, you take a gasp, don't you? Because, he's scored all these goals and these assists. He's a very technical player and he's a confident player as well. Yeah. And obviously, he's somebody that wants to progress. He's come up through the leagues, had a good season last year under Slough and Scott Davis there. We know we had players from them in the past, and we know what a good grounding you get there playing out. Scott Davis is somebody with, I think he's over 400 EFL appearances, and he's on the free kicks as well at Slough, and I think John Gilbert's made reference to that. That he never really got looking on the free kicks.
He's done all right pre-season.
Yeah, I was going to say that, but that's a skill. That's a skill that he actually brings to our team as well. Because he scored 2 free kicks, hasn't he? And they've both been different, different angles as well, different sides. So he can do them from both sides, sort of thing. And he's another one that brings that sort of little bit of quality to the team. And I mean, a question was asked at the supporters' evening because he had a few red cards in his time at Slough, hasn't he? But that question was directed to him. How are you going to curb that? And George has sort of said, you don't want to curb that, but you just. But it was a way that Scott Davis had him playing, playing on that edge, and he wanted them to play like that. Yeah. But hopefully under George and Craig, he will know when to rein that in when he needs to because players like that offer so much, you want them on the pitch for 90 minutes, don't you? Because they're the potential game changers. So it's no point being sent off in the first half and then putting your team under the pressure, is it? So hopefully that penny will drop, and we'll see all the good attributes that we've seen in pre-season coming to the fore and really driving us forward and getting us up that league is where we all want to be. And then again, David Cisse, it's another one that he's got the experience there, hasn't he? Yeah. He's part of that Eastbourne side that we beat in the playoffs, so they obviously finished higher than us in the league, and we played pretty much a full season with them. He's had that experience at Barnet and Willstone in the higher league, so. And again, he's another one that's looked good in pre-season. Solid defensively, and likes to get forward. Probably not seen it yet with the assists, and that would back that up with his stats for last year, only getting 3 assists. But hopefully that's something that doesn't matter how much experience you are. These players, they're still of an age where you can still learn new stuff, and you can you come into a different team with a different. Different tactics, different systems, different patterns of play. Hopefully that will benefit him, and he'll pick up them assists, and as well as keeping that great defensive record that we had last season intact.
Indeed. Next up on the list, promising left back Leo Hamblin. He signed from Weymouth. He made more than 75 appearances over the last 2 seasons with the Terrors. To the right hand side, and a re-signing of midfielder Jeffy Tanga. He initially joined the Stones on a 1-month loan in 2024. His loan was extended until the end of the 23-24 season. He was at Ebbsfleet United last season, so nobody's perfect. Thoughts on that duo, Nigel?
You look back at their highlights videos, and they have their games where they're in the game, they're match winners. That you can see why we've brought them in. Yeah. I mean, it was Joe highlighted it in one of his videos. I think it was a commentary game that he did against Weymouth last year. That 0-0 game. He was a standout player.
He was.
He's absolutely and considering that that was a Weymouth side that were really struggling. Yeah. It's like we've said in our previews as well. You come. A lot of young players. You come to the Gallagher Stadium, a team that's chasing a playoff place. You raise your game, and it's good that he can perform at that standard on a big occasion. Yeah. So that proves that he's got the attributes to do that. So it's just about, again, George. It's not just about the players and their technical ability. They get players in as a person as well. Try and develop them as a person,
not just a name.
Exactly. It's kind of like they know what it will take to get the best out of them players.
Yeah.
Sometimes players just need an arm around their shoulders and just a little word in their ear saying you can do it. And sometimes it's maybe a tougher love. You need to kick them up the backside kind of attitude. But that's where the management skills will come in. And we've seen it. With loads of the players that have come through our system,
where they've ended up. Football league,
exactly. Even in the 3 years that Craig and George have been here, well, this is coming into their third full season now, isn't it? So. And again, you're looking at it. Look at the players that have gone through, even that have come under George. Ryan Gelvin that was here. Talking about the left back, he was left back here when George came in. He's just now got a move to Barnet in League Two. After having a really good season at Halifax.
Yeah.
Levi Amanchi. Well, we'll come on to the forwards, obviously. But he's another one that he's come in that you're looking at the stats. They're not great. But George sees something in these players, and it's something that they are rough diamonds, and you've got to work with what you've got and try and work with that, and then cut out the mistakes, kind of thing. And and that's again, moving on to Jeffy. He's a player that we got in on loan from we got him in on loan from Leyton Orient, didn't we?
Yes.
He's been well in previously, but he came in from Leyton Orient. Raw talent, real raw talent.
Very.
And he's a player that we wanted to sign last year, but he was advised, as it looks now, wrongly to go to Ebbsfleet. But at the time, he's 19 years old. You're having a chance to go to a National League side. You're not going to turn it down, are you?
Exactly.
Obviously he's seen the errors of his ways, and he's come back because he knows that that development's there. He's got that one goal for us, didn't he, down at Dover?
Yes.
Literally after the Coventry game, didn't we? And then I think he had a really good game towards the back end of that season. I don't know if it was the Averley playoff game, but where he was literally terrorising the left back for the team that he was up against. And but again, he's got that low centre of gravity. He's going to be the one that's going to needs to get himself in the box. He's going to win a lot of free kicks for us in and around the area, if not penalties if it's inside the area. Yeah, and we've talked about John Gilbert and his prowess on the free kicks. If you've got a player like that winning them in and around that, and you're an opposition player team, and you can't give them free kicks away, the player's either going to get away from you, or you're going to concede that free kick, and then it could lead to a potential goal. So, I think he needs to develop his goal and assist output.
Yeah.
He's getting into the positions, but sometimes it's that final ball. But again, he's a raw talent, isn't he? He's 20 years old. So again, it's somebody that he knows how George operates. He knows the fitness levels he needs to attain to, and he knows what he needs to do to develop his game. He'll have his own sort of set plan that he needs to follow, and hopefully he can produce that not just for him, but for the team as well.
And a full season as well, because obviously only half season last time.
Absolutely,
so
exactly that. Exactly that. And he's had sort of spells in pre-season where he's been really good, but then there's been times when he's not in the game. It's just about bringing that all together. And I know it's only it is only pre-season, so you can't judge anybody on that. But again, you can see why George and Craig have got these players in. You can see the skills and the tools that they've got. You've just got to sort of bloom, sort of thing. And the seeds of a team are there. It's just how you water that, and a bit of luck with the sunshine and everything else that you need in a season. Like all players, you need that little bit of luck with injuries and suspensions. But if you can get a run in the team and prove your worth in the team, you can have a good season.
Next through the door, Alexis Beeden joined following a stint at Farnborough. He plays at both centre-back and right-back, 35 appearances in the National League South last season, chipping in with 2 goals. And winger Jamie Yealer joined for the 25-26 season after leaving Isthmian Premier League side Chatham Town. He provided more than 40 goal contributions in his 2 seasons in ME4. He has National League South experience with Chelmsford City and Eastbourne Borough. Thoughts on those 2, Nigel?
It's the same as what we've said, isn't it? You can see the attributes that are there. I mean, Lexus, as a highlight, if you look at his goals on YouTube or wherever you get these platforms, there's a game. I think it was a trophy game where Slough were playing Maidenhead, so obviously it's a big game because there's a lot of local rivalry there, and he literally drove the ball from the defensive areas, just run up the pitch. He's got such a big build. He's such a strong lad, isn't he? And literally let fly and scored an absolute worldie goal. And that's a big game like that. And that ended up being the game winner as well. So again, he's come through that Scott Davis sort of tutorship. He's come through that Slough. We know what Temi brought to us last year. I think he's got very similar attributes to Temi. He led the ball all day. He's big and strong. Not many players are going to go through him. And then he's a threat from set pieces as well. From corners and free kicks. And we've already said, if you've got somebody like Gilbert and that's Sam Corn, he takes free kicks as well. We can mix it up a little bit there. And I'm sure there's other players that we haven't seen yet that would be good on a free kick. So. You want somebody on the end of those free kicks. There's no point putting a great ball into the box and no one's getting on the end of it. So if you've got these big, strong lads that can overpower players, and I think he's going to have a good season. And like you say, well, we've said before, we had that 23 clean sheets in the league last year, and
a lot of goals from centre backs as well.
Exactly. So again, it's fitting that profile of players that. They all are, you can see what attributes they've got, and you can see why we brought them into the club. And then that's the same with Jamie Yiller. Again, he's had that little bit of experience at National League South with Chelmsford, playing down the road at Chatham. Great first season. I mean, he was ripping the league up, wasn't he? The first season. And he plays off of that wing again. We've had players here in the past that play in that position, and Messrs Luque and coming in off the wing and scoring all those goals in our title winning season. So again, you can see what they bring to the team, and it's just about keeping them fit and getting them up to speed on the way Maidstone play, and as George is big on what it takes to be a Maidstone United player. It's all right playing for a team like Chatham that are on the up, and it's the good times there, and a lot of the supporters are Gillingham supporters. Don't hold that against them, but they go to the Chatham games as a bit of a laugh, meet up with their mates. There's no expectations on them to sort of perform. It's a good day out watching a football, bit of cheap footy. So, but coming here against the Maidstone, you've got a big expectant crowd. You've got that big Genko stand behind you that's really wanting you to win. They want being a Maidstone United player, you're expected to be at the top end of the table.
So another man who wants to contribute for the Stones further up the pitch is Ruben Carvalo. He was the next man through the door. 23-year-old midfielder spent last season with Maidenhead United before joining Worthing on loan in January. Scored 1 goal and made 5 more. I personally tipped him to be the difference maker last season in that title race preview video, and he came so close to doing that for Worthing. Of course, your expectations of Ruben, Nigel?
Yeah, I mean, when it was announced that Ruben had signed, I think he was the one that made me sort of sit up and take notice. I think, hello, you know what I mean? It's one of those signings that if any other club in the league had made it, you'd be waxing lyrical about it, wouldn't you? I mean, he proved that, in my opinion, he was the best performance by an opposition player in that game here against Worthing. He actually got an assist for both goals, didn't he? But obviously Temi scored the own goal. But he put that cross in there. It was one of those, like Jeffrey Boycott always used to say, down that corridor of uncertainty, wasn't it? And Temi had to stick or twist, and he had to clear it, and he just caught it wrong, and it went in the goal. Unfortunate, but most own goals are that way. But that cross in was just he had to deal with it. And again, and then he repeated that again in the Boreham Wood game on the Tuesday evening, straight after that game. He got a goal and an assist this time, and that the cross that he put in for that the winning goal. I mean, that's EFL standard crossing, and that is like it's what I call a buffet ball, isn't it? Just help yourself. All you're going to need to do is get something to it, and it's going to be a goal. So again, it's them qualities that he possesses, and I know he sort of a little bit fell out of favour with the Worthing fans, and a couple of Worthing fans that I spoke to have not been showering him with praise as much as what I would have expected. But again, it's like the eye test for me. You know, you've got to see these players with your own eyes. You know, you can go off the stats, but you know, it's the old saying, it's stats, facts, and damn lies. You know, there's always reasons behind fall off in stats and that. You know, and we don't know what that is. We don't know what goes on behind the scenes. But you know, if these players have had them stats, and you know, he started last season at Maidenhead in the National League, and you know, got a few appearances for them. Went to Worthing for his loan, started off that really well, and you know, I believe it was something to do with like the Border League, and Worthing didn't want him to play in it, but because he was on loan from them, they sort of like couldn't control what he did. Maidenhead were happy because he was out on loan for him to do it, and it all got a little bit tetchy, and you know, but you know, again, on his day, he's a match winner. Yeah. You know, pure and simple. You know, he's the one that's going to just pull that cross out of the bag, and you know, 90th minute, step up and do it. So again, it's about sort of getting these players more involved in the game, making them feel loved, making them feel part of the team, making them feel contributed, and you know, building teams around these players, these you know, really good players, the difference makers, and let them shine.
So TJ Bramble was the next name in at ME14. The Antigua and Barbuda international signed from Welling United, where he made 34 appearances in their midfield last season. And joining him in his journey along the M2 was forward Josh Redfern. The 24-year-old striker began his career in New Zealand, culminating in a prolific spell with Auckland United before he moved to Welling in October last year. Your thoughts on that former Wings duo, Nigel?
Yeah, I mean, TJ, again, he's a player that I've heard of. You know, he was highly thought of at Gillingham, wasn't he? You know,
Yes.
He, you know, for his age group, he was, you know, he's a big, strong, again, another big, strong lad, tall, defensive midfielder. And I think that's a position that, you know, we needed strengthening. The last few seasons, we've not really had anybody that's held down that defensive midfield role. And yeah, he's come into the team, and I think, you know, other than John Gilbert, he's been the standout player for me in pre-season. Yeah. You know, he's one of these players that's no nonsense. He does exactly what it says on the tin, doesn't it? Wins the ball, gives it short. You know. Yeah. You know, we have seen a couple of times. You know, he has looked to put a ball.
There might be a 10-yard pass in there, but generally they're
exactly, and that's what you need. Somebody that's going to do that dirty stuff. Yeah. And I mean, throughout pre-season, George, you know, there was times last year when he did play free at the back with the wing backs bombing on, but he has. I don't know whether that's just generally because of George's, you know, injury this, you know, in the pre-season, he hasn't really been able to start him. But you know, if you're only playing two at the back with a flat back four, you know, you need that really strong defensive midfielder in there to stop things coming through the middle, can't you? And we've already said about Cisse, you know, how good he is defensively, and you know, again, if once that fitness is there in season, you can, you know, bomb up and down, but you still need somebody that can cover that position. And you know, if you're a defensive midfielder, and then when your right back or your left back's gone upfield, you can slot back in. And we still, again, that was, you know, mentioned in one of Joe's videos that, you know, that game on New Year's Day down here at the Gallagher, he actually played in defence, you know, because of the injuries and the suspensions that Welling had at the time. So again, he's another versatile player, and you know, somebody with a lot of promise. I mean, as we said, you know, he's come out of Gillingham and went into a Dover that season when they had them point deductions. So again, you know, there's reasons behind those stats. You know, he kind of lost his way a little bit, but you know, from what we've seen, the tools are there. You know, he's got all the attributes, and again, it's just about nurturing these players, and then going on the flip side of that, you know, you've got Redfern coming in. You know, he's come over from New Zealand. You know, he's a player that not a lot of teams will know about. You know, he's kind of had a little bit of a run of goals in that Welling team, but I think it was such a shit show by that time that, you know, they were changing formations every week. You know, and you know, the manager then went, you know, prior to the end of the season.
He did,
you know, there was only one way they was going. So we know in previous relegation seasons, you know, you can be the best player in the world, but if there's only one, if you're on the Titanic, it don't matter, does it?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
You
can, you know, it's very difficult to shine in those circumstances. So again, you know, not a lot of teams are going to know a lot about him. George and Craig and the scouting team have obviously seen something there that they can work with. You know, he's still of an age where, you know, he's not too old that you can't teach him new tricks, kind of thing. He wants to come in, he wants to learn, he wants to sort of establish himself in this country to potentially get higher and move up the leagues. And again, you can see why we signed him.
Yeah, potty mouth. Next signing through the door was David Agbontahoma. He joined from Boreham Wood. 23-year-old defender spent his youth career at Arsenal and the Saints Southampton before playing senior football at Sheffield Wednesday. That then led to his 3 seasons at Boreham Wood. And then another former wing was signed up in the form of forward Dion Moore. He is a Guyana international with 5 goals in 12 appearances for his country. We seemingly have enough former wings to make a mythical bird. Phoenix from the Flames, perhaps, this season. Anyone? Maybe. Nigel, your thoughts on that pair, please?
I mean, going on Dion Moore, he's the Marmite character, isn't he, of the signings, you know. Again, he's 26 years old. He's gone through Peterborough. We know what Peterborough, how they identified the non-league talent. Hasn't worked out for him. He's generally sort of come backwards in his career. And he's found himself here again. But, you know, you just got to hope that, again, what we've been saying throughout this whole preview, Craig and George have found something in him to contribute to the team, you know, and he said it in the KM, isn't he? He offers that little bit of hold-up play, and we've seen that in the pre-season games. Yeah. If you've got that attacking threat, we did, you know, when Papadopoulos was here and Rush was here, but Aaron wasn't a player that's going to hold the ball up. You know, he's going to be the runner, run down the channels, get onto those balls, and we saw it great. And he got his 20 goals last season, but you know, sometimes you need that back to the goal player that's just going to hold that ball up and just lay it off for the runners to come onto. You know, it's a different way of playing. You know, it's been critical. It's been critical on the social media that we do like punt balls forward aimlessly. Obviously, there was a purpose to that. Yeah. But you know, what Dion does offer you is it just gives you that. You know, he's another one that's a strong lad. You know, he holds the ball up. He can, you know, back to goal, hold the ball up. Turn a player, you know, he's got a little bit of technical skills about him, and I think he was unlucky in the Millwall game where he had a couple of shots and the keeper didn't really have too many that good a game. He did make a few howlers, but the 2 saves that he did make were against Dion. Yeah. So, you know, he's unlucky. But then in the Colchester game, he got his 2 goals, and you know they were proper poachers' goals, and you know he muscled his way in there and got to the ball first. Yeah. So again, that's good signs. And then, you know, going back to Agbontahoma, and that's another one that, you know, another
big strong lad.
Yeah, he is another big strong lad, but he's a very good technical defender. Yeah. And again, he's sort of come. I know he was at Boreham Wood last year in the National League, and you know had a few injuries, never really got into the team. You know, under Ross Jenkins when they started. Luke Garrard's come back in, changed formation, so he's kind of been like a victim of that as well. You know, I don't think it was after we dicked them 4-0, but you know, so he never really got that run in the team. But you know, you don't come through the Southampton Academy. Yeah. Started off at Arsenal, came through the Southampton Academy, signed by Sheffield Wednesday, not the Sheffield Wednesday Academy, signed by Sheffield Wednesday.
First team,
You know, and then went out on loan at Boreham Wood. Impressed initially, so they signed him. You know, again, he's somebody that you can see the talent that's there. You know, he's got the potential to elevate the game and hopefully his game and the team upwards. And it was, I think it was the Millwall game. There was a game where he lost out on a header. Imagine that they're kids as well. The player got round him, but he had that speed to get back and time that challenge to perfection in the box. You know, so again, you can see the skills that are there. You can see what they bring, and he's another one that I think is going to have a really big season. You know, we've mentioned Gilbert, we've mentioned Carvalho. You know, these are match winners. You know, these are, you know, and again, if you're a defender and you're coming into a Maidstone side that's got that good defensive record, you know that you're going to. If you've got the skills, George and Craig can develop you into that team. You're gonna, you know, if you can be that standout player, you know, you're gonna have to see what's happened to Timmy. You know, he's gone from a National League South standard player to now being touted as a future Football League player at Eastleigh. You know, so again, you can see why they were brought in. It's just about getting all these sort of like rough diamonds into your big sort of 24 carat gold team. Exactly. You know, and that's the challenge this season.
So we have given you some of what you need to know on the new signings. You can find all you need to know on the JP on Comms YouTube channel with his deep dives into each and every one of them. And Joe, Mr. Parkhouse, will of course be joining us too throughout this upcoming season. So, brief reflection on the pre-season so far. We've played 5 of the 6 scheduled matches, won 3 of those, a loss and a draw as well, 3 clean sheets in those wins. How have you viewed the pre-season so far, Nigel? I know one line we've had in some of our little WhatsApp groups is John Gilbert being this season's pre-season Pirlo, hoping he can continue that form into a full season Figo perhaps.
Again, like I've mentioned there in the preview, you can look at stats and you can look at previous clubs and that. You never know what goes on behind the scene with these players. Yeah. And I tend to like to look at the eye test basically, see what players like. You know, pick and see. And I've been pleasantly surprised. Yeah. You know, again, with all the players that we've brought in, you can see why they've been brought in. They've all got that. You know, they've got to be good characters first and foremost. Yeah. You know, and that's the trend that runs through all of these signings. And you know, John done the 10 things you need to know about the players, and they've all. You know, why did you come to Maidstone? To win the league. Yeah. They're not been prompted to say that. They're all coming there because George just gives you that belief that, you know, to achieve that extra 10%, you know, and if you can do that, and if you can do that as a collective, you'll become a team. And you can see that in the pre-season games. John Gilbert stood out. I think he scored in every single pre-season game.
Bar one maybe, but it feels
the Chatham game, I think so. And they've all been, you know, good goals as well. Yeah. You know, they're not been just little tap-ins. So you can see what he brings to the team, and you know, there's a good spine there. I mean, and you can see that sort of the patterns of play that we're trying to achieve, and you know, the systems that we're trying to do, and even with the players that we haven't seen much of yet, like Carvalho and Yiller, and you know, George Fowler. We know what George Fowler can do, but again, you know that they're still involved in the training of the team. You know, it's just you've just got to protect them because they're not used to the training system methods that we're in. You know, they've got to come up to that standard. So Georges are going to play them if they're not up to standard. So you know that when they do come into the team, they're going to be fit, they're going to be ready, they're going to be there to deliver. You know, they've all been. Sometimes you've got to reach for the stars to get to the moon, haven't you? So you know, just it's just George's hashtag, isn't it? Believe, just believe. You know, as supporters, that's all we can do, isn't it? You know. We're not involved in the day-to-day stuff, what's going on in the club, but you know, if the team's delivering on the pitch, just believe, just go with it. You know, it's going to, like we've said, there's going to be a lot of eyes on the league this year. There's going to be a lot of big games. You know,
yes.
You know what I mean? You know, they come straight off the bat. First home game against Torquay. You know, again, they're going to be up there this season. Yeah. You know, they've had a lot of signings on top of what was already a good squad. So, you know, just get behind in your numbers, support the team, and just see where it takes us. That's all you can do, you know.
So a few changes yet again in the National League structure and sponsors and rulings and things. We'll quickly break this down for you, a little nugget of info for you here. The new sponsors you may have seen online, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, they're in after Vanarama's 11-year association ended at the end of last season. From the 25-26 season, this season coming up, National League have introduced a multi-ball system for all clubs, all league fixtures. The IFAB laws of the game state Law 2.3, the ball. Additional balls which meet the requirements of Law 2 may be placed around the field of play, and their use is under the referee's control. So the referee's got even more to have to do. Lucky them. 10 match balls, 1 in play, 1 with the fourth, and 8 balls around the pitch. It'll be the Mitre Ultimax match ball for the coming season, so don't all go out and rush out and buy that ball. Although considering the amount of balls that leave the ground, or those that destroy laptops, it's probably sensitive to have balls at the ready and a proactive rather than reactive approach. But more professionalism added to the lower reaches of the leagues. We also believe there should be 7 subs on the bench in South and North this season. They were promised to phase it in from National League to National League North and South, where we had 5 of 5 last season on the bench. National League proper had 7 subs on the bench and 5 of those that could come on. So we'll wait and see if that comes to a town and a bench near you soon. And finally, the new 8-second rule was implemented during the Ulsan versus Mamelodi Sundowns match at the Club World Cup. Yes, you all remember it well. We were all glued to it. Good old DAZN. Goalkeeper Ronwyn Williams, he held the ball for more than 8 seconds and a corner kick was given to the opposing team. So another rule change for you to get your head round. If we'll see it being implemented or not, though, we'll wait out and see in August at some point, won't we? So let's look at the fixtures now then. They've been released. The key periods ahead for Maidstone United. The opening month looks fairly tricky. There's a trip to Worthing at the end of that month, along with visits by Torquay and the newly full-time Chelmsford. Tricky start to September. There's a midweek trip to Weston-super-Mare. A first Boxing Day home match since the 4-0 2013 win against Margate. The Stones will host Dover Athletic in that match. Easter sees Good Friday in the reverse fixture with Dover before hosting Hornchurch on Easter Monday and finishing at Bath City on the final day. Although I will pick out a couple of fixtures right at the start, literally the first 2, Nigel, to whet your appetite with. Obviously, Hemel Hempstead and Torquay United, our first away, then home fixture. They've got a heck of a record against those 2 sides. If you'd have wanted to pick, having done a little bit of research and jumped ahead, if you'd have wanted to pick 2 sides, no disrespect to either of those, because I know who your favourites might be this season to potentially go up, but for a Maidstone United side that has played 25, 30 games against those 2 sides, probably 1 loss against those 2 in the last 10, 15 years, couldn't have picked a better start on paper for Maidstone, could you?
No, and that's exactly it. I think last season we had that start, and I know as it turned out we played Truro in that first month, didn't we? But there was no expectation on Truro. I mean, you know, only a few people sort of saying they were dark horses.
John!
But yeah, there was no expectation. So again, when you're coming up against those sides and you're losing to those sides, it puts a lot of pressure because you're expected to be one of the teams up there.
Exactly.
So you measure your performance against expectations, don't you?
Yeah.
So hence why it looked like we didn't have a good start. But in theory, you know, we had a tough start. But again, this year it's reverse of that. You know, you're playing 3 of the teams that are expected to be up there in your first 6 games. Yeah. You know, so you're like, if you do well, it's kind of not a free hit as such. But if you do well or you perform well, it can kind of create a little bit of a morale boost. You know, if you get a draw at home to Torquay, you know that's going to be in the grand scheme of things going to look like a good result. Whereas last year we got that home draw, 0-0 draw against Hampton and Richmond, and because Hampton and Richmond were expected to be down there, so we should be beating teams like this, you know, rightly or wrongly, and it adds that extra little bit of pressure coming off the back of a Truro defeat. You know what I mean? So again, I think that can work in our favour. You know, a new team, you know, going into these games as underdogs. You know, a lot of the pundits are not going to have that much expectation on the teams. So it's going to be like Torquay coming to her. Like, this is going to finally be the year that we can break that hoodoo at Maidstone. Yeah. You know, all the pressure's going to be on them. So again, it's kind of like that sort of lesser expectation. Yeah. You know, it could be just what the team needs to gel. And that no one, you know, them against us kind of thing. You know, we're the underdogs, and you know we've seen where that sort of George likes to play on that underdog mentality, doesn't he? And I think he's very much sort of like kept under the radar. You know, he's letting the talking happen on the pitch rather than, you know, making these bold predictions in the press, and literally going under the radar. Yeah.
Fingers crossed it does, but I mean, in terms of either end of the season as well, looking at the mileage that's got to be put in. 3 of our last 7 away games take place in 3 of our 6 longest round trips. And then at the start of that, the flip side, 2 of the 6 of that sextet, that big set of distance to do down towards the West Country, those take place in the first 4 away games, because we've got to get ourselves to Totton very early on as well. So the travelling seems to be, and then Weston-super-Mare as well, of course, on that Tuesday. So there's a lot of travelling at either end of the season. It did seem like last season started with, always being on the M25, always those long journeys. But the middle of the season potentially seems to be fairly consistent with the average we've got to do. So, I mean, the travelling, the owners mentioned it in their pod a couple of months back about the travel costs and things like that, and just the mentality of how they go and perform doing everything in the one day. So there's not too many longer trips, but at the same time, you're hoping that for everybody concerned, players and fans, that those early starts and those long days out are going to be rewarded, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And that sometimes, that's a good thing, isn't it? Because when you've got a new squad, being stuck on a coach for 2 or 3 hours, provided you don't break down, of course. But,
of course.
But again, that sort of like beds in that them against us mentality, doesn't it? You're in that closed environment, it's going to be one of the first away ones as well. So, the initiation songs and all these things that go on away trips, it bonds the players together, doesn't it? So again, if you can sort of feed into that mentality of them against us, it could be a good thing.
Yeah. So one little nuance in the fixture calendar I've picked up, and presumably someone else has online, at least 2 others maybe. The FA Trophy Round 4 and the FA Cup Round 3 are both on the same weekend this coming season, which, to my mind at least, does smack of disrespect from the FA to the non-league pyramid, and that we shouldn't be darkening their door come the 3rd round of the FA Cup, frankly. It shows our 5th round achievement may potentially become a thing of the past, with all the replays being cancelled down and extra preliminary rounds in all the cup competitions. I mean, Tamworth last season made round 3 of the FA Cup and the 4th round of the FA Trophy. So it's not out of the realms of possibility, Nigel, is it, for something like that to go awry in the fixture calendar?
No, and we've been the recipients of that, haven't we?
Yeah.
When Lincoln had the FA Cup run, when they got to the FA Cup 5th round, we had them towards the end. We had to have that game postponed, didn't we?
Yeah, it was midweek before the end of the season, last weekend.
The last weekend before the last season, because they went deep in the FA Trophy as well at that time. Yep. So. Yeah, I mean, it's always been the case, isn't it? And you hope it's a problem that Maidstone can sort of like force the FA down. I'd love to get to the 4th round of the FA Trophy and the 3rd round of the FA Cup. So again, it's not against out of the realms of possibility, is it? That's something that you'd like to think we'd have a good sort of push for this season is the FA Trophy. I mean, it's you've seen it before with National League or sort of step 2 teams, haven't you? Getting to Wembley, it's not, Hornchurch have done it when they were in the league below us. So, bring it on, I say. Make the FA make a decision and make them look like fools.
More so than usual. So is there anyone else that we think could prevent the Stones hopefully going 1 match or 6 positions better than last season? I've already mentioned those 3 relegated sides from the National League, Hornchurch and Chelmsford, with big early signings, Hampton and Richmond new owners, the 5 who remained from last season's playoff pack, the 3 who came down, we've mentioned them. Could make an argument for a good half a dozen challengers this coming season. And then the new investors at Dagenham, and we've already mentioned that Geordie Pett fella, the certain ex-England and Newcastle striker who knows the Dagenham area quite well from his West Ham days. The league was a basket case last season, Nigel, so how on earth are we in a position to, it'd be even more of one this season, frankly, wouldn't it?
And we're not. That's it. I mean, it's going to be one of those leagues that's just going to make you look foolish as a predictor, isn't it? Because no one can know. No one can know. You take educated guesses, but again, all the managers in the league are playing with the hands they've been dealt with. If you've got new Qatari owners coming in, and you're the Lee Bradbury at Dagenham and Redbridge, and he's literally said, go and splash the cash on what you want, But then again, is it a case of like who's financing these sales? Is Andy Carroll somebody that Lee Bradbury's going to be able to work with? I know he's come off of a season with Darren Moore at Port Vale, so he's going to have his own contacts. But again, how are you going to settle these players in? And you can go with Angelo Harrop at Chelmsford. He got that Braintree team promoted, but again, they were literally like went under the radar. Nobody expected them to go pretty much what we've been talking about with Maidstone this year. They got that mentality, them against us sort of thing, the pub team from Essex, and ran with it, and it got into the playoffs with a late run and just carried that momentum right through. But again, he's now in a different position where he's got all these players. He's gone into a candy shop and got all the best sweets, but you've got to then manage that into a team. Is he going to be able to do that? Is he going to be able to gel them? You've got the players like Ricky Holmes and Tom Lapsley going in there. Veterans, in their mid-30s, all that experience, you've got to manage their minutes. They're not going to be able to complete 46 games in the season, are they? So again, it's how you sort of bring all that together and
stat attack, stat attack, stat attack. That'll do. You've had enough singing. The copyright, the LPs, they'll all be out there, the lawyers. Maidstone became the 19th side to lose a playoff final in South. The other 18 between them the following season have gained promotion more than 1/3 of the time. 3 league winners by an average margin of 14 points and 3 playoff final winners out of the other 12. 1 lost a playoff final but was awarded the promotion anyway, as you do. 6 made the playoffs again, and the other 5 missed out on the playoffs by an average of 13 points. So Nigel, it's, we said stats, damn lies, facts, etc. in no particular order. It's a mixed bag for those who fall at the final hurdle, but where do you think the Stones will be come April or May in 2026?
Well, I think it changes on a day-to-day basis, doesn't it? It's one of those where you think you've got, where the team's going, and then you go and see one of the other teams go and sign a player, and you think, oh, that's a good player. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So I think I like to think that we're going to make the playoffs. I mean, I think in my head, I'm thinking we should be up there in the mix to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
I don't think we've got enough sort of to go for league, but again, you never know. Like Truro came through last year and won it again. And I keep going back to this as well. The 2 managers that were promoted out of this league last year, John Askey, Luke Garrard. You know what I mean? So all the players that all these teams have got, it's come down to the managers and how they've sort of managed that day-to-day, that game-on-game scenario. Luke Garrard did it. When we beat him 4-0 at the Gallagher here at the beginning of April, they looked out of it, didn't they? Yeah. But he just made that change, going from the 3 at the back that he's always played, or into the 4 at the back, giving you that potential, that extra attacker. Matt Rush had a vein of form. Again, you can say he got lucky, but at the end of the day, they came through and they won it. So you can start the season with great expectations, and again, all these teams change. What's to say that Chelmsford haven't spent all their budget now, and they don't have a good start, and they've got to make cutbacks, or they get injuries, they get suspensions. It all comes down to that sort of like how you manage the season going forward. What loan signings you can get in that's going to be the game changers and the difference makers. So how a team, and I've said it all along, isn't it? It's not how you start, it's how you finish.
Exactly.
And time and time again, teams that get promoted prove that. So I say, there's a ceiling there that we could sort of potentially get that 5th, 6th, 7th place, and then there's the cellar door that we could be down in 14th, 15th place. There's so many teams in that mix, and you just don't know how the season's going to pan out, how the fixtures fall with teams opposition teams having suspended players against you. Once the season sort of settles down, when they kick in, teams having FA Cup runs and resting players before they play you because they're in the FA Cup, and it's just so many different scenarios in there.
So a quick ex-Stone against the Stones update. According to my particular set of homework papers, they are currently at 13 of the 23 other clubs in National League South, so that will help our regular feature as ever this season. You'll find out where they all are as this season unfolds. So it's been just under 12 weeks since we all saw the Stones fall 1 step short of promotion to the National League. The Stones find themselves at this level in National League South for the 3rd consecutive season. Last time they had been in South that long They ended up winning the league back in 21-22. Here's hoping history repeats itself for the Stones. So, pitch lines have been freshly painted and mowed, the players signed and re-signed, the new shirts purchased, pressed and laundered, pre-season fitness drills taken care of, only a couple of things left for it now. Firstly, to say thanks again to you all out there for watching or listening to this latest edition. Like and subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Just search for the Maidstone United podcast. You'll see in here myself and Nigel Seeger in the first match preview of the season ahead of the Stones trip to Hemel Hempstead. We're going to lay low at a Coldplay concert via Heathrow Terminal 3. Until then, no one will notice us, I'm sure. Hashtag topical, hashtag Maidstone United podcast. And to that final thing, as always,
come on, you Stones!